Many research tasks involve the desire to gain access to additional sources of a given text or related body of texts. And this is why one will go to incipit files in many cases. Incipit, of course, is the Latin word meaning it begins, and it's often used at the beginning of large texts to indicate the beginning of the text. Thus, the word became used simply to indicate the beginning of a text. The technique I shall describe for you is specific to printed catalogs of manuscripts, but readily you can adapt it for internet searches and database searches. Every time you look for incipits, it's because there is a larger research project in hand. My work for decades has been on Susanna of the Old Testament. I've found over 2,000 texts in over 40 languages, and over 200 of them treat her as a prefiguration of Christ. She's the first woman to have that role, which is highly affirmative of women. Back in 2004, for the first time, I found a sermon which began with the words from the middle of her prayer, which begins, HMML MORIOR. HMML MORIOR, which means, behold, I die, although I have done none of the things which they have maliciously fabricated against me. In this 15th century manuscript I discovered back in 2004, it continues, originally Susanna said these words when she, innocent, had been condemned to death. Christ also could have said these same words when he was hanging on the cross, for he was the most innocent of all. Discovering this raised new research questions. Did other manuscript copies of this sermon exist? Were other sermons written that used that explanation of her words? Was this motif transferred into other genres? What was the time span when they were written? What was the earliest one? What was the latest? How many versions, how many copies could be found? Latin used this. Did vernacular sermons also quote these words? How widely across Europe was this preached? Over the course of the next 10 years, I found 30 sermons which began with those words. Many of them were different, although there were 6 copies of one particular sermon. Using a variety of sources, I'd found this. I secured a fellowship from HMML to transcribe what looked to be the earliest, and indeed proved to be the earliest, of these sermons. And I also used a bit of my time when I had finished transcribing manuscripts to search in the wonderful collection of print catalogs at HMML to search for more texts. Some of these are rare copies of handwritten or typed originals from small libraries. HMML has bound copies of these. Others are deluxe printed reference works from major libraries. The multi-volume set of manuscript cataloging on Ethiopia, prepared for HMML by Tkacz is also there. Many of the excellent modern scientifically complete catalogs have been prepared by HMML and are available there on site. Manuscript catalogs vary widely in the thoroughness of their description and the way they give you access to material. Now, when searching for incipits, keep a record, a simple record of your search. This is not a to-be-published bibliographic file. This is simply your way of keeping track of your research. Indicate where you are. Give it a date. All you need is a short identification of the work you're searching. Sometimes that will be a fuller title, sometimes short. Annotate that as needed, for instance, with volume numbers or the name of an index that you use, and mark it to show the results. A null sign is a handy way to show panned out. No incipit was found there. Otherwise, you could mark it with the number of new incipits which you discovered, or a new copy new to you copy of a sermon you'd already known about, a text you had already known about. I was able to search just 32 of the catalogs in the limited time I had available. I found 4 new texts, including one in Polish. Also, a copy of a text I had already known about. Also, keep in this record the details of what you are searching. I'll get back to that in a moment. First, gut the catalog. This is very important. You're not into this to read the entire catalog. When you select a given catalog, ascertain its scope and format so that you can go directly to what you need and then move on to the next work. Efficiency is your friend. Is the catalog in several volumes? If so, how is it organized? By discipline? By genre? In that case, you need consult only one or a few volumes. Is it the entire collection treated volume by volume, arranged by century, so that the work you might want could be in any of the volumes? What indices are available and where are they? At the end of each volume? Or if you have a multi-volume catalog, look for separate index volumes at the end. Does it have a list of incipits? Now that's going to be the easiest means for you to find additional texts. Otherwise, is there an index that will substitute? In my case, HMML MORIOR is a quotation from Daniel 13. A scriptural citation index would be of help. HMML MORIOR is the correct spelling of the words beginning the text I'm looking for. Consider likely misspellings. HMML MORIOR. I have found that. Also, variants, as well as misspellings or even reorderings. N instead of etche, et instead of etche. An intrusive word, litus, happy. And litus morior is actually a quotation from a passage in Genesis, but I have found at least one text in which the author mistakenly used that beginning and then continued with the rest of Susanna's prayers. So make a list of the possible variants you might find. By having this list written out, you then are going to know what you have not searched. Only today did I find a text with this passage altered to read, Ecce ego morior. That would have been in the same alphabetical run. But if there were something in a different place in the alphabet, a sed morior variant, because I keep a record, I would know I had not searched for that. So make your revised search list comprehensive. In some cases, you aren't going to have any variants at all, and lucky you if that's so. Now, once a new manuscript is identified, then you turn to the catalog entry on that manuscript. It may have bibliography, it may have fuller discussion, it may have more of the text than you have actually seen before, simply included in an extensive quotation of incipit and explicit. You can then proceed, hopefully, to a microfilmed or printed or digitized copy of the manuscript. The task of searching requires logical ordering. That's why I called this Sleuthing Susanna. Sherlock Holmes is the same sort of operator as a researcher in a library. And note that I increased the number of manuscripts I've identified by nearly 10%. In case you're interested, here is some bibliography on Susanna and other women as types of Christ. And here is an identification of the incipit, which is at the beginning of the text, the beginning of this talk.